Dr. Ethan Carter sat alone in his small medical office on Outpost Orion, a neutral space station floating between human and alien territories. It was late, and he was exhausted. His day had been filled with treating minor injuries, burn wounds from careless engineers, muscle strains from low-gravity training, and the usual cases of food poisoning from alien cuisine that humans could never digest properly. But then his door slammed open. A group of towering alien warriors, clad in dark metallic armor, marched in. Their sharp, blue-scaled faces looked down at him with cold, glowing eyes. Ethan tensed. He recognized them immediately. They were Zyrexians, one of the most powerful alien empires in the galaxy. Their warriors were legendary for their brutal combat skills. Before he could speak, the warriors stepped aside, and a tall female figure entered. She was majestic, her regal robe flowing like liquid metal. Her presence filled the room with authority. Queen Vyrexia, ruler of the Zyrexian Empire. Ethan's heartbeat quickened. What was she doing here? A queen of her status wouldn't set foot on a human space station unless something was very wrong. She stepped closer, her glowing golden eyes locked onto his. Then, in a firm but desperate voice, she declared, "Human, my daughter needs you. A royal request or a death sentence." Ethan blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. "Your daughter," he repeated. "Yes," the queen said. "She is dying." The room was silent for a moment. Even the Zyrexian guards looked uneasy. Ethan stood up, trying to remain calm. "I don't understand. Zyrexians have some of the best healers in the galaxy. Why do you need me?" The queen's hands clenched into fists, her sharp claws pressing against her palms. "Because our healers cannot save her. Something is attacking her from within, and she is rejecting all Zyrexian treatments. No one knows why." Ethan hesitated. He was a doctor, a healer, not a warrior. But standing before the queen of an empire known for its strict traditions and pride, he sensed the weight of the moment. For a Zyrexian ruler to ask a human for help, this was unheard of. "She needs you," the queen repeated, her voice softer this time. "And if you refuse, it may mean war." Ethan exhaled slowly. That was it. He had no real choice. If he turned her down, she might see it as a direct insult to the Empire. A dangerous conflict could erupt, and millions could die. "I need to see her," he said at last. The queen nodded. The Zyrexian guard stepped forward, placing metallic cuffs on his wrists, not as a prisoner, but as a precaution. He understood. He was about to be taken to the heart of the Zyrexian Empire, and they didn't trust him yet. As they led him through the station, Ethan glanced back at the peaceful human colony behind him. He had no idea if he would ever return. The journey to an alien world. The Zyrexian warship was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. It was a massive floating fortress, its dark hull shimmering under the station's artificial lights. As he stepped aboard, he noticed how everything inside had a strange blue glow, pulsing like a living creature. The warriors escorted him to a private chamber, where a medical pod stood in the center. Inside lay Princess Zyra, the queen's only daughter. Even in her weakened state, she looked strong. Her body was covered in sleek, dark blue scales, and her tall frame was wrapped in regal Zyrexian armor. But her breathing was shallow, her face twisted in pain. Ethan stepped closer, activating his portable medical scanner. The screen flickered as it analyzed her vitals. What he saw shocked him. Her body was rejecting something inside her own blood. "It's not an infection," he murmured, adjusting the scanner. "It's like her own cells are attacking each other." One of the Zyrexian guards growled. "What does that mean, human?" Ethan turned to the queen. "It means if we don't act fast, she won't last another day." A doctor's impossible task. The queen's golden eyes darkened with fear, but she did not break her composure. "What must be done?" she asked. Ethan hesitated. "I need access to her medical history, Zyrexian genetics, and any recent treatments she's received. I also need my own equipment, not just Zyrexian tools. The guards exchanged uneasy glances, giving a human access to Zyrexian medical records. That was a dangerous request. The Queen, however, did not hesitate. You will have what you need. Ethan nodded. Good, because if I don't figure this out soon, your daughter isn't going to make it. The room fell silent. The Queen turned to her guards. Take him to the royal medical chamber. Ethan followed, feeling the weight of an empire's hope on his shoulders. If he failed, he wouldn't just lose a patient. He might lose everything. Dr. Ethan Carter followed the towering Zyrexian guards through the gloomy, metallic corridors of the warship. The deeper they went, the more he realized just how different Zyrexian technology was from anything humans had developed. The walls pulsed with a faint blue glow, and every step he took made him feel like the ship itself was alive. At last, they arrived at a sealed chamber. The doors slid open with a low hum, revealing a high-tech medical bay filled with strange, floating monitors and devices he had never seen before. In the center of the room lay Princess Syra, still unconscious, her breathing weak. Ethan wasted no time. He approached her and activated his portable scanner again, watching as the device analyzed her condition. The results flashed across the screen in alien symbols, which the ship's translation system quickly converted into human-readable text. His eyes narrowed as he read the data. Her blood was rejecting itself. But why? An unthinkable discovery. Queen Vyrexia stepped forward. What have you found, human? Ethan took a deep breath. It's not an infection. It's not poison. Something in her body is incompatible. The Queen's golden eyes flickered with confusion. Incompatible. Explain. Ethan adjusted the scanner settings, focusing on the genetic makeup of the princess. The screen flickered, and a new result appeared. His breath caught in his throat. This can't be possible, he muttered. One of the Zyrexian guards growled. Speak, human. Ethan turned to the Queen, his expression serious. She has human DNA in her system. The entire room fell silent. The guards stiffened. A few exchanged uneasy glances. The Queen, however, remained still. Her expression was unreadable. Human DNA, she repeated, her voice calm but firm. Yes, Ethan confirmed. Her body is reacting to it, fighting against it. That's why no Zyrexian treatment is working. Her immune system sees the human DNA as a threat and is trying to destroy it. He looked back at the screen, struggling to understand. But that means, he hesitated before finishing his sentence, she's part human. A dangerous secret. The Queen's golden eyes darkened, but she showed no shock, no surprise. Ethan's mind raced. Had she known? Had the Zyrexians hidden this truth? One of the guards hissed, stepping forward. Human, you will erase this discovery from your records immediately. Ethan's jaw tightened. I won't do that. If I don't treat her, she'll die. And to treat her, I need to understand what's happening inside her body. The guard drew his weapon, a sleek energy blade humming with power. Your knowledge is dangerous. Ethan stood his ground. Killing me won't save her. The Queen raised a hand, stopping the guard. She looked at Ethan for a long moment, as if measuring his worth. Then, in a low voice, she said, You will save her. Ethan nodded. Then I need answers. Who is her father? The guards shifted uncomfortably, but the Queen remained silent. Ethan exhaled sharply. If I don't know who he is, I can't determine how to stabilize her. This isn't just about genetics. It's about her entire biology. Finally, the Queen spoke. Her father was human. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. It was true. Who was he? He asked. The Queen's expression hardened. That is not your concern. Ethan clenched his fists. It is if you want me to save her. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, the Queen turned to the nearest guard. Bring the royal archives. The guard hesitated but obeyed. Moments later, a small holographic device was placed in Ethan's hands. He activated it, and a face appeared on the screen. A human man, his eyes sharp, his features strong. His name flashed beneath his image. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He knew this man. A race against time. Ethan forced himself to focus. He had no time for shock. Syra's condition was getting worse. He quickly analyzed the genetic breakdown of her blood. The human DNA inside her was clashing with her Zyrexian physiology, almost like a biological war within her own body. But why now? Why had she lived all these years without problems? Then he saw it. A recent medical entry in her records. The princess had been given a Zyrexian immunity booster just days ago. The injection was meant to enhance her strength, but it had triggered a violent reaction with her human DNA. This was an accident, Ethan muttered. The booster wasn't designed for a hybrid like her. He turned to the queen. I can fix this, but I need access to Zyrexian and human medical supplies. I have to create a treatment that will stop her immune system from attacking itself. The queen studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. You will have what you need. The cure begins. Ethan worked tirelessly, using Zyrexian technology to synthesize a new serum. He combined human antibodies with Zyrexian immune suppressors, carefully balancing them. Every minute counted. Syra's breathing grew shallower. Her heartbeat slowed. Finally, after hours of non-stop work, Ethan held up a small vial filled with a glowing blue liquid. This is it, he whispered. It should stabilize her body. The queen nodded once. Do it. Ethan took a deep breath and injected the serum into Syra's arm. For a moment, nothing happened. Then she gasped. Her body convulsed, her muscles tensing. The monitors flashed wildly, and the guard stepped forward, ready to intervene. Ethan held up a hand. Give it a moment. Then suddenly, her body relaxed. Her breathing steadied. Her skin regained its natural glow. The violent reaction in her blood was fading. Ethan stepped back, exhaling in relief. She's stable, he said. She's going to live. The queen let out a long, slow breath. The guards looked at each other, still tense, but the worst had passed. Ethan, however, knew this was far from over. The truth about Syra's human heritage was out, and someone, somewhere, was not going to be happy about it. Ethan Carter leaned against the medical station, rubbing his tired eyes. Princess Syra was stable, but the truth of her human DNA was now exposed. He wasn't sure which was more dangerous, her near-death experience or the storm of secrets that had just been uncovered. The Queen of Zyrexia stood at the foot of her daughter's bed, her golden eyes locked on Syra's sleeping form. She had barely moved since Ethan administered the cure. Ethan exhaled and looked at her. She'll wake up soon, but she'll need rest. The queen nodded slowly, but her expression remained unreadable. You have done well, human. Then tell me the truth, Ethan said firmly. Who was her father? The queen's eyes narrowed, and the room grew tense. The Zyrexian guards flanking the doorway shifted, their hands gripping their weapons. Ethan knew he was stepping into dangerous territory, but he couldn't back down. You don't understand, Your Majesty, he pressed. If her human heritage was hidden, it means there's a reason. And if someone finds out, they already have. The words sent a chill down Ethan's spine. He turned sharply toward the voice. A Zyrexian war officer stepped into the room. He was tall, his armor gleaming under the ship's soft blue lights. His presence carried a heavy, commanding aura of authority. Ethan instinctively stiffened. This was someone important. The queen turned to him. General Vorthen. The name was enough to make Ethan wary. He had heard of General Vorthen, a ruthless commander who had led multiple wars against human colonies. Vorthen's golden eyes locked onto Ethan, filled with distrust. We have intercepted communications, he said in a cold tone. There is a leak. The council has learned of the princess's condition. Ethan's heart pounded. And what does the council want? The queen asked, though her voice carried no surprise. Vorthen's jaw tightened. They demand an immediate investigation. There will be consequences. Ethan clenched his fists. What kind of consequences? Vorthen turned to him with a sharp glare. Exile. Or worse, a forbidden truth. Ethan felt a wave of frustration. He had risked his life to save the princess, and now they were talking about punishment. She didn't ask to be born this way, Ethan said. She's not a threat. The council does not see it that way, Vorthen replied. A Zyrexian royal with human blood is a disgrace. It is against the traditions of our people. Ethan looked at the queen. And what do you think? The queen's expression remained calm, but something flickered in her eyes. A deep, guarded emotion. My daughter is Zyrexian, she said simply, and she will remain so. Ethan frowned. Then why keep this a secret? Why didn't you tell your own people the truth? A long silence followed. Then, finally, the queen spoke. Because the council would have killed her. Ethan felt a cold weight settle in his chest. The queen continued, her voice lower. When I was young, our people waged war with the humans. We saw them as weak, as inferior. But there was one who proved us wrong. Ethan leaned in. Her father. The queen's golden eyes softened for the first time. He was unlike any human I had ever known. Fearless, clever. He fought against us, but not with weapons, with knowledge, with words. Ethan listened intently, feeling a strange sense of admiration for this unknown man. But the council, the queen continued, would never have accepted our union. To them, it was betrayal. She looked down at Styra, who still lay unconscious. So I hid the truth. I protected my daughter. I let the world believe she was purely Zyrexian. Ethan felt a mix of anger and understanding. He exhaled sharply. And now that truth is coming back to haunt you. Vorthen stepped forward. The council will arrive in less than a day. If they confirm this, they will order her execution. Ethan's stomach twisted. You can't let that happen. The queen's jaw tightened. I will not. A desperate escape. Ethan knew there was only one solution. Kidra had to escape before the council arrived. If they're coming for her, then we need to get her off this ship, Ethan said. Vorthen's expression darkened. That would be treason. So is hiding the truth from the council. Ethan shot back. But we're past that, aren't we? The queen stared at her daughter in silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was firm. Vorthen. The general turned to her. Prepare a transport vessel, she ordered. My daughter will leave this ship before the council arrives. Vorthen hesitated. Your Majesty. That is an order. The general held her gaze for a long moment, then nodded. As you command. Ethan sighed in relief. But deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. The awakening. Just as they began to make preparations, a soft voice broke the silence. Mother. Ethan turned sharply. Zyra's eyes fluttered open. The queen immediately stepped to her side. I am here. Zyra blinked, confused and weak. Her gaze shifted to Ethan. You saved me. Ethan offered a small smile. Yeah, I did. She looked around at the tense faces, at the worried expressions. Something was wrong. What's happening? She asked. The queen's expression hardened. We do not have time. You must leave this ship immediately. Sarah tried to sit up, but she was still weak. Ethan moved forward to help her. Where am I going? She asked, her voice trembling. Ethan exchanged a glance with the queen. Somewhere safe. Zyra's golden eyes flickered with emotion. I don't understand. Why? The queen took a slow breath. Because the council knows. Zyra froze. Her entire life, she had been raised to believe she was a pure Zyrexian princess. Now, in a single moment, everything had changed. A shadow of fear crossed her face. What will they do to me? The queen gripped her daughter's hand firmly. They will never touch you, she promised. Not while I live. Ethan clenched his fists. Then we'd better move fast. The clock was ticking. The council was coming. And if they didn't escape in time. Zyra's fate would be sealed. Ethan moved quickly, his mind racing. Every second counted. The Zyrexian Council was coming, and if they found out the truth about Zyra's human blood, she would be executed without mercy. He turned to General Vorthen. "Where's the transport ship?" Vorthen hesitated, his sharp eyes flickering between the Queen and Tyra. "It is being prepared, but sneaking her out will not be easy." Ethan exhaled sharply. "We don't have a choice." Zyra sat on the edge of the medical bed, still weak but determined. Her golden eyes were filled with uncertainty. "My whole life, I was told I was a true Zyrexian," she whispered. "Now I find out I am not." The Queen knelt before her daughter, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "You are my daughter. That is all that matters." Zyra's fingers tightened on the edge of the bed. "But if I run, doesn't that mean I am guilty?" Ethan shook his head. "No, it means you're smart enough to stay alive." The Queen turned to Vorthen. "What's the security situation?" The general's expression darkened. "The Council's personal guards have already entered the outer sector of the ship. They will reach us within an hour." Ethan's stomach clenched. Time was running out. The hidden path. Vorthen led them down a long, dimly lit corridor, moving fast. "There is an old maintenance route that leads to the lower hangar," he explained. "The guards rarely patrol it." Ethan helped Zyra walk, her steps still unsteady. She was getting stronger, but her body had not fully recovered from the poisoning. As they turned a corner, a group of Zyrexian soldiers appeared in their path. Ethan's pulse spiked. Were they here to stop them? But the soldiers didn't draw their weapons. Instead, they bowed. Vorthen stepped forward. "You are with us." A tall Zyrexian soldier, her silver armor glinting under the pale lights, nodded firmly. "The Queen has commanded us. We will protect the princess." Zyra looked at them, her expression filled with emotion. "You are willing to fight for me." The soldier met her gaze. "You are our princess. We will not let the Council take you." Ethan felt a spark of hope. They weren't alone. An unexpected betrayal. They'd reached the hidden maintenance corridor, moving quickly. The air smelled of metal and coolant, the passage narrow and winding. Suddenly, a loud alarm blared through the ship. Vorthen cursed. "They know." Ethan felt a chill run through him. The Council had discovered the escape. "We need to move, now." They ran forward, but before they could reach the hangar, a massive blast door slammed shut in front of them. Zyra gasped. "They'd locked us in." A voice echoed through the corridor. Cold, commanding. "You cannot escape, princess." Ethan turned sharply. A figure stepped out of the shadows. It was High Chancellor Orvic, one of the most powerful members of the Zyrexian Council. His golden eyes burned with fury as he stared at Zyra. "You have brought shame upon our people." Zyra stiffened, but Ethan saw the fear in her eyes. Orvic turned to the Queen. "You kept this secret for too long. Now you will answer for your crimes." Ethan stepped in front of Zyra, his fists clenched. "She's not a criminal." Orvic's gaze flicked to Ethan with pure disdain. "And you, a human, meddling in affairs beyond your station." Vorthen drew his weapon. "Step aside, Chancellor." Orvic smiled coldly. "You forget your place, General." Then, with a simple motion, he raised his hand. And suddenly, the guards that had sworn loyalty to Zyra turned their weapons on them. Ethan's heart sank. A trap. Fighting for freedom. Blaster fire erupted through the corridor. Ethan grabbed Zyra and pulled her behind cover. Vorthen and the Queen fought back fiercely, their energy weapons flashing in the darkness. "We need another exit," Ethan shouted. Vorthen pointed ahead. "There's a vent system above us." Ethan looked up and spotted a small maintenance hatch. It was narrow, but they could squeeze through. "Zyra, go," he urged. She hesitated for only a second, then climbed up with Ethan's help. The Queen followed, moving with surprising agility. Vorthen covered them, firing at the traitorous soldiers. But as he turned to follow, a plasma shot struck him in the chest. Zaira screamed, "Vortan!" The general staggered back, his armor smoking. He gritted his teeth and pushed a device into Ethan's hands. "A ship is waiting in dock C-12. Get her there." Ethan's eyes widened. "You're not coming." Vorthan smiled grimly. "I will hold them off." Ethan knew what that meant. Vorthan was buying them time with his life. But there was no time to argue. With one last glance, Ethan closed the vent hatch behind them, leaving Vorthan to face his fate. A dangerous escape. They crawled through the tight metal tunnels, the heat and smoke making it hard to breathe. Zaira's hand shook. "We left him behind." The Queen's voice was quiet but firm. "He knew the risk. We must honor his sacrifice." Ethan kept moving. They had lost too much time. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the exit, a narrow grate leading into the docking bay. Ethan peered through. Guards were everywhere. But beyond them, a sleek transport ship was waiting. Their only way out. "We need a distraction," Ethan whispered. The Queen nodded and pulled a small device from her robes. "I have one." She pressed a button, and suddenly, an explosion rocked the entire bay. Sirens blared. Guards rushed toward the chaos. Ethan grinned. "That'll do." They slipped out, moving fast toward the ship. The engines were already humming, ready for takeoff. Zaira grabbed Ethan's hand. "We're almost there." But just as they neared the ramp, a shadow loomed over them. Ethan turned, his heart stopping. Chancellor Orcs stood in their path. His eyes burned with rage. "You will go no further." Zaira tightened her grip on Ethan's hand. The final battle for their freedom had just begun. Ethan stood frozen, his body tense. Chancellor Orcs blocked their path, his golden eyes burning with cold fury. Behind Ethan, Zaira and the Queen stood firm. The transport ship was only a few steps away, its engines humming, ready for takeoff. But between them and freedom stood one of the most powerful Zyrexians in the Empire. Orvek's lips curled in disgust. "You think you can escape? That you can defy the Council?" Ethan clenched his fists. "We're done listening to the Council." Orvek's expression darkened. He moved fast, too fast for a man his age. Before Ethan could react, the Zyrexian Chancellor raised his hand, and a powerful energy wave slammed into him. Ethan was thrown back, crashing into a metal crate. Pain exploded through his ribs, but he forced himself up. Zaira stepped forward, her own energy flickering around her hands, her Zyrexian power awakened. "You will not take me, Orvek." Orvek laughed coldly. "You are a mistake, a disgrace to our kind." His gaze shifted to the Queen. "And you, my Queen, will be remembered as the fool who destroyed our people's purity." The Queen narrowed her eyes. "No, Orvek. You and the Council are the ones who will be remembered as cowards who feared change." Orvek's expression twisted in rage. He lunged. A desperate fight. Zaira moved first. Her energy flared as she met Orvek's attack, their powers colliding in a blinding flash. The force of their battle sent shockwaves through the hangar. Ethan struggled to his feet. He didn't have Zyrexian powers, but he had something just as strong: human determination. While Orvek was focused on Zaira, Ethan charged forward. He grabbed a metal pipe from the wreckage and swung hard at Orvek's side. The Chancellor grunted in pain, stumbling. Zaira took the opening. She unleashed a powerful energy blast straight at him. But Orvek countered, twisting his body and absorbing the attack. With a flick of his wrist, he sent Zaira flying backward. She hit the ground, gasping for breath. Ethan's heart pounded. They couldn't win like this. The Queen stepped forward, her face calm despite the chaos. She pulled out a small silver device from her robes. "Orvek," she said softly. Orvek turned, sneering. "Your tricks won't." The Queen pressed the device. A sudden pulse of energy rippled through the air. Orvek's body froze. His eyes widened in shock. His power flickered. Ethan didn't hesitate. He rushed forward, delivering a powerful kick to Orvic's chest. The Chancellor stumbled back, his strength failing. Zyra, her breathing ragged, pushed herself up. She gathered the last of her energy, her hands glowing. "For Vorthen," she whispered. She released a final powerful blast. This time, Orvic had no time to react. The energy hit him directly. He screamed as he was thrown across the hangar, slamming into the metal floor. His body lay still. For a moment, there was silence. Then the Queen spoke. "It is over. A race against time. No time to celebrate." The alarms blared louder. More guards were coming. Ethan grabbed Syrah's hand, pulling her toward the ship. "Move. Now." They ran up the ramp, the Queen following close behind. The ship's pilot, a loyal Zyrexian soldier, activated the launch sequence. "Hang on." The doors sealed shut. The ship rumbled, engines flaring to life. Through the window, Ethan saw dozens of Zyrexian soldiers storm the hangar, weapons raised. They fired, but the ship's shields held strong. The transport lifted off, breaking free from the docking bay. Ethan exhaled, his muscles finally relaxing. They had made it. Sarah collapsed into a seat, breathing hard. We're free." The Queen sat beside her daughter, her expression unreadable. "For now." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" The Queen gazed out the window, watching as the Zyrexian homeworld faded into the distance. "The Council will not stop hunting us. Orvic may be defeated, but others will come." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we'll fight. We're not running forever." Zyra looked at him, her golden eyes filled with something new. Hope. For the first time in her life, she had a future to decide for herself. Ethan reached over, squeezing her hand. "We'll figure it out. Together." Zyra nodded, her fingers tightening around his. The Queen watched them both, a small smile forming. The fight was not over, but they had won this battle. And for now, that was enough. The transport ship soared through the dark void of space, leaving the Zyrexian homeworld far behind. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Ethan stood near the control panel, watching the blinking radar screen. He could hear Xyra's slow, steady breathing behind him as she rested, her energy still drained from the battle. The Queen sat silently, her gaze fixed on the stars outside. They had escaped, but they were not safe yet. The ship's pilot, a loyal Zyrexian named Vec, frowned as he checked the navigation system. "We have a problem," he muttered. Ethan turned. "What kind of problem?" Vec pointed at the radar. "2 Zyrexian warships just left orbit. They're following us." Ethan clenched his fists. "Can we outrun them?" Vec shook his head. "They're faster, better armed. We won't last in a fight." Zyra pushed herself up from her seat. "Then we must find another way." The Queen nodded. "We cannot go to any Zyrexian-controlled world. The Council will expect that." She looked at Ethan. Where would humans go in such a situation? Ethan thought for a moment. Then an idea struck him. A human outpost. There's a station near the asteroid belt of Vornak 7. It's independent, run by traders, smugglers, and mercenaries. The Zyrexians won't have full control there. Vec quickly checked the star map. That's risky, but it could work. If we can hide there long enough, we might find another way out. The Queen gave a firm nod, then set course for Vornak 7. Vec adjusted the controls, and the ship changed direction. But on the radar, the enemy warships were getting closer. Time was running out. The chase begins. Alarms blared. The warships had locked onto them. "We're in their targeting range," Vec shouted. A moment later, the first blast hit. The ship shook violently as red warning lights flashed across the control panel. "They're firing plasma cannons," Vec yelled. Ethan grabbed the nearest console to keep himself steady. Shields. Holding, but not for long. Another blast rocked the ship. Dvyra stumbled, but Ethan caught her before she fell. "We need to lose them," the Queen said, her voice calm despite the danger. Ethan scanned the radar. "There. A debris field ahead. Can we hide there?" Vec's eyes widened. "That's an old battlefield. Wrecked ships, unstable energy cores. If we go in there, we might not make it out." Ethan gritted his teeth. "If we don't, we're dead anyway." Vec hesitated, then nodded. He pushed the engines to full power. The transport dived into the wreckage, weaving between massive broken ships floating in the void. Some were human, others Zyrexian, all destroyed in battles long past. The warships followed, firing relentlessly. "We need to do something," Syra said. Ethan scanned the battlefield. Then he spotted something, an old human warship, half intact, its reactor still unstable. "If we can trigger that reactor," Ethan started. Vec's eyes widened. "It could cause an explosion big enough to stop them." Syra didn't hesitate. "Tell me what to do." Ethan moved quickly to the weapons console. "We don't have missiles, but if we fire a focused plasma burst at the right spot." Vec adjusted the aim. A single shot. That's all they had. Syra placed her hands on Ethan's. Her energy flowed into the ship's weapons, strengthening them. Ethan fired. The plasma blast hit the reactor dead center. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, boom! A massive explosion erupted, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The Zyrexian warships were caught in the blast, their shields flickering. One spun out of control, slamming into a wrecked cruiser. The other veered away, damaged but still operational. "We got one," Ethan shouted. But the second warship was still coming. A desperate gamble. "We can't take another hit," Vec warned. "We're too close to a reactor overload ourselves." Ethan looked at Tyra. "Can you use your energy to boost the engines?" She nodded, though she was clearly exhausted. "I can try." She placed her hands on the engine console. A faint glow surrounded her as she pushed her power into the ship. The engines roared to life, surging forward at speeds the transport had never reached before. The Zyrexian warship tried to keep up, but it was too slow. Within moments, they had cleared the debris field. The warship, unable to follow, finally gave up the chase. The ship shook, warning lights flashing, but it held together. Vec exhaled. "We're clear." Ethan let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Sarah collapsed into the nearest seat, exhausted. Did we do it?" The Queen looked at the radar, then at the stars ahead. "For now," Ethan placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You saved us." She smiled weakly. "We saved each other." Vec adjusted the controls. "Next stop, Vornak 7. Ethan nodded. They had survived the chase, but the real fight was still ahead. The Zyrexians would not stop hunting them. The Council would not give up. And somewhere in the darkness, Chancellor Orvek's allies were already planning their next move. But for now, Ethan allowed himself to breathe. They had made it one step closer to freedom. The transport ship limped through space, its hull scorched and its engines barely holding together. But they had made it. Vornak 7 was in sight. A massive station floated in the asteroid belt, surrounded by small ships docking and departing. Unlike the sterile, controlled worlds of the Zyrexians, Vornak 7 was chaotic and alive. Neon lights flickered along its metal hull, and dozens of factions controlled different sections. Vec let out a relieved breath. "We're here." Ethan, still watching the radar, frowned. "I don't like this. The Zyrexians wouldn't just give up." Tyra, exhausted but alert, nodded. "They'll come for us soon." The Queen stood tall, her golden eyes filled with determination. "Then we must be ready." Landing on Vornak 7. A ship docked in a quiet sector, far from the main entrance. Ethan stepped out first, scanning the area. The air smelled of oil, metal, and trouble. Traders, mercenaries, and smugglers filled the narrow streets. exchanging credits, weapons, and secrets. A large four-armed alien stepped forward, glaring at them. "You new here?" Ethan nodded cautiously. "Just passing through." The alien grunted and walked away. Ethan relaxed slightly. For now, no one knew who they were. The queen adjusted her robe, concealing her royal symbols. "We need to find allies." Vec checked his wrist device. "There's a human-run bar nearby. They might help us." Ethan sighed. A bar. Of course. A dangerous meeting. Inside the dimly lit bar, music played while different species huddled in their own corners. Ethan led the way, scanning for someone useful. At the far end, a human woman with cybernetic arms leaned against the counter, sipping a drink. Vec whispered, "That's Captain Rhea, ex-military, now a smuggler." Ethan walked over. "We need a ride." Rhea glanced at them, unimpressed. "And I need a fleet of warships. Looks like we're both out of luck." Ethan smirked. "We have credits." Rhea raised an eyebrow. "How much?" Before Ethan could answer, the doors slammed open. Zyrexian soldiers flooded in. The final battle. The bar erupted in chaos as soldiers drew their weapons. The queen stepped forward, her presence commanding. "You dare defy your queen." The leading Zyrexian officer, a tall warrior named Commander Orvic, sneered, "You are no queen. The council has declared you a traitor." Ethan clenched his fists. "You just don't give up, do you?" Orvic pointed at Xyra. "The girl must come with us. Her power belongs to the council." Xyra stepped back, fear flickering in her eyes. Ethan stepped in front of her. "You'll have to go through me." Orvic smiled cruelly. "Gladly." The battle began. Blaster fire lit up the bar. Ethan ducked behind a table, firing back. Vec tackled a soldier, knocking him out. The queen fought with swift, deadly strikes, her movements precise. Xyra, still weak, pressed herself against the wall. Ethan could see her hands trembling. She was afraid. "Xyra." Ethan called. "You're stronger than them. Fight." Xyra's eyes widened. She took a deep breath, then raised her hands. A pulse of golden energy surged through the room. The Zyrexian soldiers stumbled, their weapons flickering. Orvic's expression twisted in rage. "No." Ethan lunged, punching Orvic square in the jaw. The Zyrexian fell hard. Silence filled the bar. The remaining soldiers hesitated. Without their leader, they were lost. Rhea finished her drink. "Well, that was fun." She looked at the queen. "I assume you need a fast ship." The queen nodded. "And a new home." Rhea smirked. "I know a place. A new beginning." Hours later, they were in deep space, aboard Rhea's ship. Xyra sat beside Ethan, staring out the window. "It's over." Ethan sighed. "For now." The queen placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "We will rebuild. Somewhere the council cannot touch us." Vec grinned. "And with Captain Rhea, we might even make some money along the way." Ethan laughed. "Great. Now we're smugglers." Xyra smiled softly. "As long as we're free." Ethan looked at her, then at the stars ahead. A new adventure was just beginning.